Hey guys, welcome to Mieke Studio Umbiamas, conectando Aruba com o mundo via vídeo podcasting. Conectar conosco, compartilhar ideias e histórias para nos inspirar e para conan abrir. Mieke Studio é plataforma de podcast na Aruba. Follow-nos no Facebook, subscribe no YouTube ou na plataforma de podcast preferido. Escute o podcast preferido que hora e onde que está. Mieke Studio, powered by Credits, botiu ideia? Credits educava e prepara a abo para vir um empresário exitoso. De business plan, guia personal e préstamo para negócio até com 100,000 forinhos. Vira para mês donho com Credits. Subway. Passa na Subway para o sop, salada, wrap ou flatbread e mais fresco. Com 7 localidades rond Aruba. Nós está cerca de Ibo. Subway. Swing Masters. Organizando events, conferences of weddings, Mr. de luz, sound, staging, DJ, trussing of flatscreen, Swing Masters está claro para ser boa fiesta éxito. Swing Masters. E agora, Mieke Studio é plataforma de podcast de Aruba está apresentar.
Yo, you don't know. We going global with this thing. Boom! Top class, university. What a global opportunity. Arubian University. Take part, come join me. Together for the local experience. Spread the culture all over the nation. Let's build up the community. Learning and teaching in diversity.
Hello, and good afternoon, and welcome to Straight Up Conversation About Education, a program sponsored by the University of Aruba, creating a platform where we can share ideas and different ways we can look at life, but also at education here in Aruba, and we're bringing education home to you. Buntardi, turhindi. Ibombini na Straight Up Conversation About Education. We're meeting un co-host Noble. So today I have a new co-host because my colleague is abroad on business. Deborah, greetings to you there in the Netherlands. And she will be back next week with us. But in the meanwhile, I'd like to welcome Mieke de Droog.
Welcome. My name is Mieke de Droog and I'm welcome to be here in the show. Thank you for being invited. And I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Science and the Program Manager of the Bachelor Program Organization Government Management. And I'm the Program Director of the Aruba Institute of Good Governance and Leadership.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have to come a little closer to the mic because I'm not really hearing you that well. So we'll make sure and put up all the volumes. So Mieke, for those of you who did not hear us yet, that was Mieke de Droog. So Mieke, I'm going to ask you to repeat what you just said so everybody can make sure that because she's going to be my co-host today and we're going to talk about a very, very important subject. So Mieke, introduce yourself once again.
Yes, my name is Mieke de Droog. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Science and the Program Manager of the Bachelor Program Organization Government Management. And I'm the Program Director of the Aruba Good Governance and Leadership Institute of the University of Aruba.
Yes, and this week you kicked off the week with a very important conference where we talked about NIS assessment. We'll get back to that. And we are so lucky today to have our guest here. So before you introduce the first guest, as you know, those of you who just tuned in, this is Straight Up Conversation About Education. We think it's very important to really know and get to know the people we're working with. People who enhance education in our community, because when we meet as one-on-one and we understand who we really are, it gives a better connection. What do you think, Mieke?
Yes, that's true, completely true.
Yes? Okay, so you know what? Before Mieke introduces her guest, Mieke, who is Mieke de Droog?
Well, I'm a person who's very passionate about empowering students and empowering the public. And I'm very passionate about my topic also, about organizations and management. And, I'm living here for 30 years on Aruba, and I love Aruba. I also love the country where I'm born in, the Netherlands. And so I'm here.
So now the public is going to ask you, what brought you to Aruba?
Yeah, I was following my husband. And then I created my own life and my own family. And I'm very pleased that my children and grandchildren also are living on Aruba.
Awesome, awesome. It's almost Mother's Day, so lots around the corner. But Mieke, you did not really share it in because I know you're also very good at sports. Because I know when I run, I see you at all the competitions. So you're also very much a sport fan. What do you do for sports?
I like swimming, I like running, bicycling, everything, dancing.
Yes,
So
and I overheard your conversation. You just got a new bike.
just got a new bike with the intention to go to the university on bike.
Okay, awesome. You see that? We're making sure that our COT footprint is done by using less cars if we're close by.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So that is Mieke de Droog, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Science, and she's going to be joining me today as we're going to discuss a very important subject on the national integrity system. There was an assessment done, and we have those who are responsible right here on the table. So, Mieke, could you introduce Willeke?
Yes, I'd like to introduce Dr. Willeke Slingerland. She's a lecturer at Hogeschool Saxion, and she's the lead researcher for the National Integrity System research. Therefore, she's here this week to present it. So we're very, very happy that she's here to present it with us. And today we had a very interesting session also with the students and with the lecturers.
So before we go into what you actually did, because she has been with us online first for 2 years, and she's finally here in Aruba. So Willeke, explain a bit. Introduce yourself. Who is Willeke?
Willeke is 42 years old. She has 5 children. I have 4 sons, 1
Wow.
daughter. And my daughter is with me. Yesterday at King's Day, she was 6 months old.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm a busy mother and combining that with work. And I like to dance, and I like to go to festivals to dance, but I also dance in the mirror, in front of the mirror at home when nobody's watching.
Except your daughter.
I hope she, but she likes to see me dance because it looks crazy, and she continuously laughs.
Okay, so why dancing? Dancing gives you that nice sensation to release stress, or it really gives you, or do you get your bright, sparkling ideas when you dance?
I don't have any ideas, but I feel it's the purest form to experience emotions. So when you're happy, when you're sad, and it's actually your body which has the flow of the emotions you feel. So it's a way of expressing yourself.
So then you're right, good here on the Aruba Vibes, where everything is about music and food and
Indeed,
having
although
their
I
own
have been working mostly, but I look forward to experience some music. Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure that Mieke and Armand, who I'm going to introduce in a few, will give you some free time because you have been doing a lot since you're here.
Yeah, but it was so great to finally arrive here. Like you said, 2 years of working on it from a distance, finally get to meet all those we've interviewed, all those students we worked with. So it's work, but it's fun.
Okay, all right. So now, before our last speaker, last but not least, I've known him as a young person and I still work with him. So nice. Armand Hessels, welcome.
Thank you very much, Charis. Really nice to be here again with you.
Welcome to Straight Up Conversation about educational program sponsored by the University of Aruba. And can you please, before we really dive into why you're really here this afternoon, tell us a bit, who is Armand Hessels?
Armand Hessels is a guy who is enjoying the best job at this moment that you can imagine, which is a pensionado. So as a pensionado, I can decide more or less fully how I divide my time. If I really work, if I would consider what I'm doing as work, which most of the time is not. But the fact that you can really choose freely about the way you fill in your time is something so great that even if it is a lot of effort that you're doing, the fact that you're choosing it yourself makes it really
makes all the
enjoyable.
difference. And I think our listeners can hear how passionate you are. But before you go and dive right into what you're doing, Armand, besides being a pensionado, I know you used to work at Colegio. That's where I met him. He was a gym master in the days of Colegio. And what did you do too? Because how did you get from there to where you are now? So tell us a bit about who you know, what you do as hobbies, who's Armand, because everybody that went to Colegio Urbana knows Armand Hessels. But still, just for our new listeners and viewers, explain a bit who you are and then how you got from point A to point B.
Well, there is a tight connection between point A and B, because I thought at a certain moment that it's ridiculous that pupils and even grown-up people would use the car every day just for short distances to go to school, and just do that passively in a car, while there is such great opportunity to do it by bike. And that's why I started a campaign to set up bicycle paths in Aruba for pupils, for young people to be able to go independently from their parents to school, but also after school time to the library or to whatever place. Because I like the independence already getting used to from a young age. And while I was doing that effort, at a certain moment, I, of course, needed the approval and the cooperation of the government to set up these bicycle paths. And I must say that at the beginning, they cooperated very good. Plans were made. They made it all these sketches and so on. And then we came to the phase of financing. And already I had collected some money from the commercial sector from Aruba. And the government made the compromise. They compromised itself to put for every florin that I got from the community, a florin from the government. And at a certain moment, we had an evaluation moment. And during that evaluation moment, I was asked how the money funding was going. And I said, pretty good. And then they asked me, okay, but do you take into account also money for the minister? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, the minister has to sign for approval for this project to go on. I said, but the minister is getting his salary for that. Yeah, but that is just his base money. He's got his real money.
Okay, all right. Now you're bringing us right where we want to be. And
That's right.
but did you notice that Armand kind of, deviated from the question, but we can just feel the passion, because I know you were explaining from point A to point B, but then your explanation is going to bring us right where the topic is about integrity, because that's what about. So I'm going to actually to wrap it up really quick so you can go to the NIS report, because we want to really spend a lot of time on that. And those of you listening, remember the University of Aruba creates a platform so we can hear different opinion, get educated about them so you can form your opinion. It's not our intention to tell you what to do, what to think, but simply for you to have the information, speak to the people, know about what's going on in Aruba, why it is important, why this topic is so important, and so you yourself can then, have that mindset to be part of the growth that we need within Aruba. So just back to you, and I'm going to actually to wrap it up so I can ask Mieke to actually explain what happened this week, and also go to Willeke and say what have you been doing for the last 2 years. Yeah. So I'm going to actually to wrap that up there, Armand.
It's a fast wrapping up, because as a matter of fact, they asked me for money for the minister, which I refused, of course. And when I left there, because that as long as you don't pay, the minister won't sign for the project. So I said, okay, then he won't sign, then there is no project. And I left, and I was very, very angry. And I said, okay, I'm going to expose this.
Yeah.
I'm going to expose this. And when I started to inquire, to do some analysis and reports and so on, then I noticed that this was the way of doing business in general from government people. And then I started, because I thought this was it was such a big injustice for the community, because so much money would be deviated from the development of the community.
Projects.
That I thought this is a big crime. And then I started to, make people aware of this thing going on, and try to really get more people behind this as an effort to improve the quality of governments. And that is the way we are trying to succeed.
To do it. So you also wanted to make sure that the Aruban public have critical thinkers, that we just don't accept everything, that we question it, but also know where the information comes from. So Mieke, let me go now. This is a conversation, ladies and gentlemen. So, feel fine to, and those of you at home or viewers, you can put your comments, and we will always make sure that we will get back to you if you have any questions or burning questions that we did not answer. Mieke, could you explain what really happened this week, and why Willeke and just so we'll meet Thomas are here, and we started, and then I'm going to shift the conversation to Willeke to explain what research you conducted for the last 2 years.
First, I want to come back to you about critical thinkers, because that is really what Aruba needs, and where the University of Aruba comes in place. And this week, I think we had an awesome week. It was very nice to have the researchers here, because they did the research in COVID time. So the whole research was done online. But this week we started with a kickoff presentation for the public on Monday. And then they had several meetings with several organizations like unions today. And also we had a very interactive session with students and lecturers, which will surely lead to follow-up research sessions. And Monday, the 2nd of May, at 10 o'clock, we have an interactive session with the public, so everybody is invited. And I think it's very important, because Willeke is lectors Resilient Democracy. So we'll surely talk about that, and not only having a presentation, but just to ask critical questions and come with each other in a dialogue and conversation, because that's what's very important.
Okay, so everybody who's listening in, everybody's invited at University of Aruba on May 2nd. At what time?
10 o'clock.
At 10 a.m. So, I think anybody, this is part of your work, as you and Armand and Willeke will discuss. Everybody's responsible. When we talk about national assessment and we talk about national integrity systems and having assessment, everybody is part of it. But Willeke, I know Mieke mentioned it a few times, but what is the NIS assessment? What is it that really went on the last 2 years before we go into the finding and in depth? Because you've been every day, you've been busy speaking to groups and lecturing, but also having fierce discussion.
Yeah, so the NIS assessment, the National Integrity System, is a methodology developed by Transparency International, and that's an anti-corruption watchdog. It's seated in Berlin. It has about 160 chapters across the world. And so everywhere this NGO is actually actively involved in fighting corruption and promoting integrity. This NIS is a way of researching the integrity system, so the way institutions within a society together promote integrity or fight corruption. So this thinks of it as a Greek a temple metaphor, in which all pillars of such a Greek temple have a function in promoting integrity. So you can think of the parliament, the judiciary, the ombudsman, political parties, media, civil society. So in total there are 13 of such pillars, and what we've done actually is looked at how they are regulated, so what are the laws in these pillars, and what is the practice, and of course with a focus on how do they safeguard democracy and how do they safeguard rule of law.
Now, one of the things I remember when I was there Monday evening, you talked about the 13 pillars, but you also emphasized the responsibility of each citizen.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we can always think of democracy as something which should be organized by government, and that's a very classical way of thinking of democracy, while resilient democracy is something which we consider as the citizens themselves having to empower themselves and having to be empowered and engaged in such a way that they actually, carry the democracy. So instead of leaning back and waiting for government to get its things sorted, actually think about what you can do as a citizen, what you can think as an NGO in order to promote democratic principles.
Okay, but now you said you did your online interviews for 2 years. How did you get the data and how did you get the interviewers? Because somebody was like, is it not one-sided? And, is it really democratic? How did you choose the interviewers?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because the independency of this research it's very important. If you talk about integrity and you pinpoint at integrity issues, you must be acting with integrity yourself. So this is something our research group did a lot of thinking about. We've been carrying this research out with 6 researchers. Thomas will be here and will be speaking to all of you later. We carried out extra interviews. So the NIS methodology requires 2 persons to be interviewed for each pillar. We spoke to 70 we had 70 different interviews. What we've tried to do is, because we worked from long distance remotely, we try to variate in terms of the functions of the individuals, so operational and top management. We also asked local academics to shine their light on the integrity. And what we've done, because probably we'll get to talk about that later. We know that here the party affiliation partisanship is an issue. So we were very aware that we actually invited, if we had to talk to political parties, that we tried to invite at least a broad range of political parties.
Okay, so thank you very much. That is just this, we're just scratching the surface here. For those of you who are not able to be there on Monday, by next week at the University of Aruba, we will have it on our YouTube channel. You can see the whole conference. And also we will have a summary also posted next week so you can have an idea of what is really going on. But could you please explain, Armand, how does that tie into Deugdbestuur Aruba? Because you are a very important involvement in this project, and how did it initiate?
Well, as a matter of fact, this NIS analysis was the final piece in a whole trajectory of analysis in general, because I knew something about the way governance was being done, and I wrote 2 books about it, a lot of articles and then 2 books. But at the moment that we set up a foundation, I thought it should be much better analyzed in a more detailed way, and then on specific themes, on the most important problems that Aruba has, and which continuously is being mentioned in all the analysis that, let's say, institutions like the SER and the central bank and so on was doing. And that was the personnel problem of Aruba, which is mentioned in every report. The financial administration, which in Dutch is financieel beheer. Transparency is always mentioned as a problem. Then the famous functioning of parliament, because parliament is always being, criticized. Then the social economic policy of government, and as a final piece, the most sensible piece, integrity. Those were for me the 6 most important things to analyze, and it took me about 4 to 5 years to finish that part, and I put all the conclusions in one piece of paper. Just 4 pages. If you just take into account that the 6 reports cover about 500 pages, and then I put everything.
That's an art. That's a talent. Yeah.
Well, it's a
to
lot
put
of work.
500.
It's a lot of work.
Talking about dedication.
But then the conclusions in just 4 pages, and which showed very much that the way Aruba has been governed was a clear attack on the criteria of the democratic state of law. In Dutch, the democratische rechtsstaat. It came very strong under attack. And I was very surprised because one of the things that I noticed was that one of the most important aspects of the state of law is the system of checks and balances.
Yeah.
And if you see this, that system is such a wonderful piece of thinking, how it is being put into, as a system, just to prevent, for example, in the case of financial administration, just to prevent that things go wrong, how it was put together, and then I put how it is executed in Aruba. And then you can see that everything has been blocked or put out of order. And if you see that takes place from the very beginning of status aparte, and it's still more or less the case, then you can, how to call it, the deduction is, the observation is that this is not just a matter of amateurism, but it is a, how to call it?
Intended strategy.
It's an intended strategy, and that is very serious because you're working with all kinds of institutions with a lot of expertise, and I wondered, as a civilian, how come that these institutions don't protest? How come there is nothing going on, and just government can do as it wishes, to
Business
really undermine our democracy?
Yeah.
And then that was the reason that I thought, okay, I, as a civilian, have no authority whatsoever to investigate this. which organization can do that? And by looking on up, I came
Doing
up to
some
the NIS.
research. Okay.
Okay, and that is being executed by people who have the authority, who have the
Have the
expertise,
knowledge,
have- okay.
yes.
And that's why I came to the persons that did the same job for Holland. Because I said, so we need people with the expertise, with the training to do this.
Yes, and also, and you know that is because when you look at the distinct features that you mentioned during your presentation, Willeke, you said this is really happening in all small islands where you have all these short communication lines. If you would compare what you're doing now, I do understand and very relevant that you would use an organization that also worked with the Netherlands. How do you look at it in the Caribbean? Because I think this is a problem we face in the Caribbean
Yeah, it's
with
an
all these
interesting
small
question.
island states.
Yeah, I think that's one of the first steps in research, which is interesting to carry out, because I know there has been also a NIS Curaçao and a NIS Sint Maarten. So comparative research of the total integrity system, or for several institutions, would be a good first step. There are some, I think, some general denominators which are common for all islands, but there must also be unique features of each integrity system of each island which make it different from the other. But I have not been researching the other islands myself, I must say. But this is something which I think, if you talk about academic research, which is very useful and for future references.
Yes, and then before, because just so we're going to have Thomas, also one of our researchers, here with us on the table to discuss it. For those of you who just tuned in, this is Straight Up Conversation about education, and we're here with Mieke de Droog van Faculty of Arts and Sciences, Dean, Deugdelijk Bestuur Aruba, Armand Hessels, and Willeke, and now we are always in a slingerhoed.
Slingerland.
Slingerland. You see, now she told me a joke about her surname, and now I stayed with a slingerhoed, but it's Slingerland.
You said Slingerblad before, and
Yes.
now I told my colleagues I want to be named Slingerblad from now on. So.
Okay, so that was cute. Okay, so we're here and discussing the National Integrity System assessment. And one of the things now, how did the university get tied into the importance of having the University of Aruba tied into such a project, Mieke?
Yeah, we came into contact with Armand, and that was the beginning. And also Armand hooked up, zeg maar, with the researchers. And which I think is very good is that the researchers asked the university for students if they could contribute to the research. So I think that's very awesome. Today we had a session with the students, with the lecturers, and now some of those students are in the third year, next year doing their thesis. And guess what? They are interested to do a thesis
All right.
on this kind of things, because now there's one NIS, which is very important, but it's also like broad, and
Right,
so
this is
now
just the beginning.
it's just the beginning.
Yes.
So it's important that the youngsters and the future generation become more and more aware of it, and will do more research, follow more training, be more critical, speak more up. So there is where the university
Yes.
came into light.
And those of you, if you don't know, the OGM, sorry, before we
Yeah.
go to your question, go right ahead, Willeke.
Well, if I may add to what Mieke said, for us it was crucial to have the ears and eyes on the ground, because when we were asked to carry out the NIS research, it was just before COVID pandemic broke out. So we were planning on traveling, doing field research, interviewing people, but we couldn't. So the students we asked to help us, they were actually ears and eyes on the ground. They had the expertise, they know the cultural setting. And it was great fun to work with them, and also seeing the dedication that actually if you start working on the field of integrity, which can be broad, but if you go into it in the field work and look at integrity from institution perspective, well, you could see that they were passionate, and it was a real experience for them as well. And today we finally get to meet them in real life. So that was
Wow. And using their 13 pillars as a guiding principle gives you that breakdown, and also that forms the let's say the cadre, or in which we are, or on how you're doing your research. Because as you say, when we talk about integrity has been the word, I can say, for the last few weeks, and you hear it in the political scenes, you hear it in the commercial scenes, and then it's now really done with a framework.
And
so
operational.
So everybody know what to expect.
Yeah.
And, I want to go back to me before we get Thomas up here. Mieke, the OGM study, the Organization Governance study, since you're here and you're dean, maybe because tonight we're having an information session for the master program on good governance, questions. Could you just, this is a little bit different from this, but since we have you here on the table, could you please explain what people can expect tonight? And just a really bit about OGM, because we can use this as a platform.
Yes, because OGM is the bachelor's program for Organization Government Management, which is a quite broad program and leading to students working in the public and private sector and NGOs. And different roles, like a manager, policy advisor, researcher, and consultant. But tonight we're having the information night on the Master of Governance and Leadership, which might be very interesting also about this topic, because we spoke, for example, about to change cultures. How will you do that? And one of the subjects in the Master of Governance and Leadership is to change the culture. Another one, guess what, is integrity. So I will, if you're interested in these kinds of topics, I really would encourage you to come tonight to the open house of the Master of Governance and Leadership. At 7 o'clock we will start with the information session in the room.
6:30.
But earlier, 6:30,
Yes,
you have to come and you will get in contact with some lecturers and students to hear something about the program already.
Yeah, so we're not only having only the Good Leadership Master Program, but also that from System, Law, and of course our MBA, which is existing for the last 7 years. So we're giving you, listener or person, if you, for whatever reason, you finished your bachelor, you always wanted to do your master, but there was not an opportunity. This is the opportunity that university is providing for you, because Aruba needs you. We just have just under a 4% on 4% of our population that has a bachelor or master, which is like really, really super low. And we need you to move forward, especially on themes like this.
And I'd like to add, it's a part-time master. So if you're completely working, that's good,
This
because
is
the master is a part-time master for 2 years. So if you're, zeg maar, we want to change something.
Yes, this is the right time to do it. And when it's going to be part-time, but it's also going to be online. Are you going to have certain subjects online?
It will be blended.
It will be blended.
Yes.
So if someone is living in St. Martin, because we have a right reach and they're interested, they would be able to
would
be part
very
of
nice
this.
to have
Awesome.
people from St. Martin
Awesome.
too.
So,
Yes.
tur hindi ko ta escuchando, but as you sorg pa botei, pa botingi information correcto, pa assim que bopor sigi pla me bom notícia que nós começar com diferente massa programas. So, thank you very much, Mieke. That is awesome. So, now Mieke has different roles. She's part of the Deugdgroep Bestuur Aruba. Also, she's
I'm
part of
part
the
of
program.
I'm part of the Good Governance and Leadership Institute.
Right,
And
Good
we are
Governance and
working very
Leadership.
close together with the Stichting Deugdelijk Bestuur.
That's it. That's correct. Thank you. Thank you very much for that correction. And as Mieke is going to say goodbye to us just now, because we also want to speak to Thomas, and we know the time, the clock is really ticking, and this is very important, and we do want to discuss this. So one of the things, as I'm going to be speaking to Willeke, then I'm going to ask Thomas to join us in a bit. Willeke, one of the things that you said, I asked you about the differences or things that you noticed, because you also did the NIS in the Netherlands, that you would say from, okay, these are items that I say are similar, these are really different because this has to do with small islands.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I see in both countries is that the role of networks, family networks, party affiliates networks are very important. So important in the sense that it is on the one hand social capital, you get your things sorted because of these networks. But what we see here is that they absolutely form informal circuits which undermine all formal checks and balances. So I mentioned the 13 pillars. Well, that's on paper, but if you look at it from a reality check, you could actually better draw networks of family ties and political parties which are in power and which are actually the informal powers which are stronger than the formal institutions. So that's the differences. While we in the Netherlands, we have networks as well, and they are also a form of worry because they also have informal power. But we have a lot of...
We saw that these last years with these
toeslagenaffaire.
so right, yes.
We did.
There's been a lot of stuff going on in the political field in the Netherlands, yeah.
But the difference is that some of the other watchdogs in the Netherlands still, investigate such networks and actually form an independent power. So we have a national ombudsman, we have a court of audit, which is functioning, the judiciary. And so many of these other watchdogs actually make sure that these networks are being investigated and that they are actually ending up in the media. So that's, I guess, the biggest difference between two.
Okay, but before we go to Thomas, you keep talking about the 13 pillars.
Yeah.
Now, I told everyone we will not only have the video from last week, Monday, but those of you, if you log on to the University of Aruba YouTube channel, you can also see the different seminars, the Center for Lifelong Learning, my colleague Deborah Alexander, that she had for the last 2 years. So you can, because that's what I did, I kind of looked a little bit to see
Great.
what happened before so I can understand what is happening now. So you can know it's not something, as a researcher, you have to look at all the factors. Could you just quickly, before we go to Thomas, explain those 13 pillars? Because we keep talking about it. Could you do that?
Yeah. So in general, everybody knows the three important pillars, which is often referred to as trias politica. So it's the legislator, you could say the Staten or parliament. The second is the executive power, this is government. And the third pillar is the judiciary. And other than that, you have the civil service as a public sector, but also the political parties, business, media, civil society, ombudsman, court of audit, and the electoral management body. So all of these 13 pillars, and I must say Aruba has 12, or you could say 11, because the national ombudsman is not there.
It's not there yet.
And there's no anti-corruption agency. So 2 of the pillars are either not there or are to be established.
Yeah, and Armand, I remember in one of the interviews that you were doing, you were like, it doesn't matter if 1 or 2 are sturdy, because if you have 13, we don't have 2, that makes it 11, and 3 are not doing it well, everything falls down. It's like a house. If you just build part of the house with a good foundation, part does not have a good foundation, how does that affect? Could you explain the domino effect you talked about?
Well, the point is that every pillar has a specific way of looking at things, and their force lies in their cooperative functioning.
Correct.
And although there is no official, let's say, relation between them, but the fact that everyone has a specific way of looking at things, and thus also a way of how do you say it, commenting about it. At the moment one falls off,
Correct.
they affect the other ones.
Correct.
So it's so important that every pillar realizes its importance and to execute its task correctly in order really to promote the better functioning of the others and the whole system as such.
As such. And one of the things you also mentioned, or we keep hearing, when everybody hears integrity, it's like, oh, it's political. It's not about me. You know, we talked about the companies, we talked about the community at all. What are one of the things that you think that a citizen listening to us today can understand the importance of their role? How would you encourage them, and what one of the first steps that they can take?
Well, I mentioned that our role is going to change from focusing on awareness through working on a change, and that we'll do especially by making clear to every sector in our community, like the union sector, the commercial sector, the NGOs, the elderly sector, which is a hugely growing sector, but also the young, because this affects their future, to get involved in this change of a political system, because the way the political system is functioning affects the future and the well-being of every sector at this moment already, and also the future. So it requires their input to change something which everybody in Aruba is aware is malfunctioning and is affecting their state of well-being. So we know that it's malfunctioning. We cannot expect that sector, that government sector, from its own initiative is going to correct itself, is going to function better. As I told the audience during the presentation we said the track record of the government is such that it doesn't have the credibility to guide this process in a new direction. But
I don't think they should, because you said it's an all-over responsibility of all organizations.
Exactly. But it should be a partner. The importance of governments is so big that it really has to participate. So we focus on that part. It's a combined effort. And it's a very complicated process because argumentation and deliberation is not a strong point in Aruba. That's why there are so many conflicts between different parties, and I don't mean only political parties, but sectors and so on. Most often they end up in conflicts, and in order to prevent that, we asked the university to guide this process, to
As an
help in
independent
argumentation,
partner.
but also we attracted, I think, the most experienced mediator in Aruba, the person with the greatest confidence, the person with the greatest authority, a person that everybody really respects because of his experience in this, which is Mr. Anselmo Pontillas, a good friend of mine, in the time of 1985, when I think you were still in diapers.
No. Wishful thinking, but no.
Okay.
I was in the Netherlands.
Yeah, we were standing in front of the lines, and I think we were the first persons in Aruba which were covered with tear gas. Okay, so we experienced this, but there we really joined our forces and worked on trying to
and I think that's very important because I think everybody knows Anselmo Pontillas, from working with the labor forces and always being a mediator. So I think this is extremely well. But Armand, there's someone sitting to your right. Everybody's seeing him, but they still don't know who it is. Could you have the honors and introduce to me, and let's learn a bit more of who Thomas is? Could you introduce him for me, please?
Yes, Thomas is part of the section group who did the analysis, and he was chosen by the section group, as a matter of fact, by Willeke Slingerland also, because of his experience, his knowledge in Aruba, because Thomas used to be a professor at the university some 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And he was somebody who also dove into the Aruban society. He was not just a professor.
Not
Not only that, but he was a person that used to get around, know people, and as such, really got quite a good understanding of the way
of the
community was functioning.
Yes.
And I think that was a great help in the setting up of this analysis. And you could see now that he is here together with Willeke, they agreed from beforehand that Willeke, as a leader of the whole project, was doing the initial talking and presentation and so on. But you could see that in all encounters with different parties, like with the governor, with the Council of Ministers, with the unions, with etc. You can see that Thomas, where needed, and sometimes it is really needed, comes in with his knowledge and with his separate expertise on explaining certain parts.
So with no further ado, welcome, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks for having me, for the invitation.
Thanks for being here and also being a part of this very important assessment and also how we're going to move forward. But Thomas, you heard Willeke and Armand and Mieke. So who is Thomas?
What makes Thomas tick?
Well, let's first start with who is Thomas, and then we can see what makes you tick.
All right. My name is Thomas Riemsma. I'm 54 years old, almost. Next month, I turn 54. I'm an avid lecturer and researcher now for almost 4 years at the Saxion University of Applied Sciences, where I lecture different subjects, material subjects. I graduated as a civil law lawyer, also business law, and I taught that here at the university from 2002 until 2008.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay.
civil law. And nowadays I'm more into ethics, integrity. They still let me teach civil law because of my experience, but my role in the lecturate, in the research group has shifted to integrity and compliance. Also because I was head of the compliance department of the FYU in
In
Sint Maarten.
right, okay,
Ja,
so
afdeling toezicht.
so everybody who's listening, you could see how passionate and also and very dedicated it is. But Thomas, what are your hobbies? What do you do? What do you do? Are you into
Traveling.
sports, culture,
He likes
traveling?
traveling.
He likes to travel.
I like traveling. Yes, that's Willeke already mentioned it. Last time I was here in Aruba was 10 years ago. Yeah. So
Okay.
it was very.
But you have been
I
in
think-
Uganda, many African
Yeah,
states.
I like the combination of lecturing, researching, making international travels. I'm an avid photographer as well.
Oh
I got
wow, we have
nice
something in
camera.
common.
So I travel over the on King's Day. I also traveled over the island, took nice pictures, and that's what I do a
That's
lot.
what you do. So but I'm always going to keep asking, when we look at small islands in development as you're traveling, and you have also know about the different NIS report, because when I started to look on YouTube, everybody looks at it from a different perspective. From your traveling experience and also being a researchers, I'm always going to kind of look at what do you see that makes it more easy, makes it more difficult when you look to small islands. Now, Armand mentioned a few things. What about from your aspect? Because you've been to bigger places. You've been involved with different researches.
Yeah, well, Aruba, I know two small islands, Aruba and St. Martin. And they both have oligarchic features, small elites, network relations, lots of things intertwined here. And that's also the case in St. Martin. But I can't say if the same cultural aspects that we found here. We did interviews, and then we each time we repeated the aspects of culture that popped up. And I asked for confirmation, whether it was with the Minister of Finance or with the rector of the university or the public servants that we interviewed in order to cover the public sector. We continue to repeat our findings, and often that was confirmed. So that's one of the features that we think is representative of Aruba.
Okay.
I think in St. Martin you will have also findings. There was already a NIS assessment done on St. Martin, in which we not participated, but I was there when the presentation was given. It has another structure, the society. So in detail, there will always be differences, but
yes.
that intertwined relations and a small elite having power, that's something that you will find in a lot of small islands where people have power.
Right, because we have the system program where we're looking more on sustainability, etc. And you'll notice that these islands, there are some commonality, but they're always different because the culture is different. Now, one of the things Willeke also mentioned, she said there's no quick fix.
No.
There is no quick fix. No, she talks about archiving, sub-appointed ministerial posts, parliament misuse its controlling power, social and economical impact of corruption. Could you give us a bit, because you are part of the research itself, could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. What we found, first of all, because of the Avestruz case and that was brought all to court, so a lot of misstandings in the public sector became apparent. So we started to ask about, for example, about the permiso cultura, in what forms and shapes does that come back, and that was confirmed in various cases. And what also came back is that if you address these misstandings internally in departments, well, that you run a certain risk that creates a culture of fear. So that goes into a culture of silence, zwijgcultuur. Mensen praten, people don't like to talk about these issues, and well, people start to build little fences, or corner themselves in order to prevent of becoming vulnerable.
Yeah, Willeke, I'm looking at you because this is part of your presentation as well, and I'm sure when you were interviewing the interviewers, they also have their own perception.
Of course, and that's always the limitations you have. So on the one hand, I was happy to have Thomas as one of the lead researchers involved, but also the students, so the extra ears and eyes on the ground. And that's what I mentioned. We carried out extra interviews to make sure that it was a more representation of what actually goes on here. But it's difficult to do interviews because it's a sensitive topic. Not everybody dares to stand out and be honest. I'm pleased to say that after all, I think there was quite some honesty. People dare to share their experiences. And of course, if you hear them from several people, you get, well, validated. And some of them wanted to work with us on an anonymously base, so they didn't want to have their names in the report. And of course, I can relate to that. If you run the risk of losing your job or have any other forms of negative consequences, that's a reason enough to work with us, but also to not have your name in the report.
Right, because when you talk about the note, like I just asked Thomas on, it's no great fix, no quick fix. Then you talked about embrace internal criticism, more protection of whistleblowers. We don't have that.
No.
We don't, Armand, we don't have that. Hoe gaan we verder?
I don't recall how long this is on the list of getting of to be treated as a law, and that is very typical of so many things. They are being talked, and I will mention one of the most important reports that has been published, and which was Rapport Qualiteit, which I must say is an excellent report with so many good recommendations for improvement of the quality of governance. And I remember that the government that was responsible for its publication, or at least put it in hands of a commission to bring that report out, they made so much propaganda that this report would guide their governance, but in the end they really did nothing with it, and it became clear that they violated practically all the recommendations that were mentioned. And that was the first time that let's say a big project of government was being investigated, the famous San Nicolás, Desarrollo Novo San Nicolás, where not only people from the commercial sector were punished, but also a minister. And even the prime minister was put into justice, and he only escaped his verdiction because of the fact that the what is it? The juez?
The judge?
The judge said, nobody can expect from me that I understand the financial consequences within this financial chaos. And because of that, he couldn't judge the prime minister. But that doesn't make him innocent.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thomas, I see you're shaking your head. You're shaking your head as he is singing you that. Would you like to add to the conversation?
In what perspective? Sorry?
In the perspective of he's saying from, okay, he was, let's say the prime minister was then rescued by the judge because it's about the prime minister. And I see you are shaking your head. You can see this in different assessments.
No, that's one of the examples. It's a long time ago. But the list of issues, the violations of integrity are long. So I was just confirming in my thinking that took place. But there are several ways in which these integrity violations take place. And you mentioned the role of the judge. We have to mention that one of the stronger pillars is the judiciary. And it's a lock on the door. Judges function as a control mechanism here in society. It shouldn't always be that way, but there is, for example, case law that corrects acts of ministers in the last phase of their position when they give away contracts to friendly relations for positions or for land, and then there are several cases that judges say, well, this is not going to happen, and we declare these contracts void. That's a strong lock.
Yeah, and as I'm listening, I'm sure everybody listening in to this program, like I said, University of Aruba creates a platform because there's much to be discussed, and it's not about right or wrong. It's about what has to be done, what is expected from a small community, what is expected from you as a civilian, what is expected from you as government, lawyers, no matter what role you play. Now, we're coming to the end of this conversation. It's almost an hour. Willeke, I see, would you like to engage here?
I guess the biggest hope I have is for education to be a big stimulant in improving the integrity system. And education is not only about knowledge, understanding corruption or understanding integrity. It's mostly about entrusting individual scholars, children, students, also teachers. So it's about their competences, their attitude to be critical thinkers and to have a general moral compass.
And, thank you for sharing that, because I know I have another question, but I think, it's almost time for us to stop. And I would like to give each of you an opportunity to extend an invitation, but also to make sure that everybody takes this seriously, because, again, it's very easy said to talk about the politicians or those and big companies, etc. But everybody plays a role because it's from small to big. So before we close off this program, I'm going to start with Willeke. What would be your last words? And also, I don't know if you're the correct person to explain what's coming up, because I see we have a full agenda until next year, March. Or will Armand talk about that?
I could mention some things, yes.
Okay, well then I'll first start with Willeke. Then we're reaching to kind of round out this program, and I really thank you for taking time out because I think we used every minute that you had here in Aruba to engage with students, with different companies, with the government, and I mean, we really thank you for that, and the university as a whole, because I think you're definitely an added value to our educational system. So your words, and thank you for being here.
So big part of the integrity change, and that's because you support democracy. Democracy is about you. It's not about politics. It's not one-on-one politics. Democracy is all about you, citizens, and citizen engagement. And every small step accumulates into change of an island with integrity, and that's quality of life.
Thank you so much. Armand, if you can quickly tell us what to expect, because it's not only for the university. I'm so happy that there are going to be different opportunities that everyone can engage, and also your last words to our public.
Yes. I'm so glad that with our presentation on last Monday, there were so many people, not only present in the aula, but also at
online,
home with a Zoom, and we got really fine reactions from all of them. And I was surprised that on this coming Monday, which is an off day for almost everybody, that still we got quite some interested people that are coming, that told us they will be coming, because at the presentation on Monday, it were presentations, and there was no time for questions or for interactions, which will be the case on this
May
coming Monday.
2nd.
So the presentations will be short. There will be much more time for not only questions, but
for conversations and interaction,
and critical. And that is important because Willeke will focus especially on what you just said, the importance of each person's interaction for democracy. That it's not a political thing, it is a thing from the citizen. And I will go further based on what Willeke is bringing up. Okay, what can we do? How should we make use of our co-responsibility for the community? And that will be the part. I'll present a new democratic model, and that will be, I hope, an important case of study.
Thank you very much, Armand. It was really nice having you here. But last but not least, Thomas.
Yes, thank you. We paid several stakeholders a visit the last days. This morning we were with the unions. Yesterday we talked with CEDE. We talked with the students this afternoon. And everywhere we came, we were met with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of recognition also. So that's a very good point, that this topic of integrity is in the minds and the hearts of a lot of people. And I want to say that in the follow-up and the Aruba integrity strategy that's going to be developed, Well, it should take in consideration the wishes and the issues of all the things that are brought up by the people. And that in the execution of such a strategy, the voice of the people should be heard. That's what I think is an important issue.
Yes, because I see that we're going to be talking about personal policy. We're going to be looking at finance and management, transparency and functioning of parliament, and also March next year we're going to be talking about integrity in governance, the need for an alternative political system. So it's really different topics that we are going to be addressing.
Yeah, yes. And it's maybe it's also good to mention that one of the pillars in the landspakketten and is the rechtsstaat, the rule of law.
Yes.
So that's where this would also fit very well. And then you would have a supervision and cooperation institution like the COHO that would check on the execution as well.
Yes, the check and balance is what Armand talked about.
Exactly.
So those of you who tuned in today, this was Straight Up Conversation about education, and we were looking at the National Integrity System Assessment. And it was an honor for me. My name is Sharice Hoondaily at the University to have this interview. And as Willeke said, I'm just looking at one of the quotes. Remember, success is not a big step in the future. Success is a small step taken right now. And here in Aruba, as we're taking this step, and the University of Aruba would like to encourage you that we all are responsible with all these small steps to make the big change that we as Aruban, as part of an island, as part of this global awareness, need to make. So thank you so much. We hope to see you next week, Thursday, 3:30 at our another Straight Up Conversation about education. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yo, you don't know. We going global with this thing. Boom! Top class. University. What a global opportunity.